Now, I hold a graduate degree, and I understand what this means and what it does not. Now, for all my skill, experience, and qualifications in foreign languages, it probably won't amount to much in giving an expert opinion in refrigeration repair, nuclear reactor design, nor small unit tactics. Yet gun control propagandists try to impress the public with the opinions of people who know next to nothing about gun ownership or its associated rights. They'll trot out public health experts with PhDs from prestigious institutions to tell us how gun violence is akin to a pandemic or an epidemic, while ignoring how little in common an infectious disease has with an act of the human will, whether it be to abuse a civil right or to exercise it responsibly. They try with actors, or as I prefer to call them, professional pretenders, because they make a living off of being something that they're not. But name recognition and celebrity do not ensure familiarity with gun culture as it exists outside of a script. None of this really serves to inform the public about the issues, but according to Bloomberg's messaging guide from 2012, trying to persuade by facts really isn't that important. And so Everytown fed Amnesty International's Margaret Huang some hooey in the interest of trying to portray a lopsided misrepresentation of gun culture as a human rights issue. Now, first of all, how is Amnesty International really relevant here? They have a history of interceding for politically oppressed people, hence their name. But now it seems they're trying their hand at advocating for something that usually goes hand in hand with political oppression, gun control. But Mrs. Huang might be onto something in trying to approach gun issues from a human rights standpoint, although probably not the way she expects it to be. Both she and Amnesty International leave a lot out in their view of human rights. And here's what's missing. To make its case, Amnesty International published what amounts to a compilation of gun control's favorite talking points. The Second Amendment's been misinterpreted. No. Carrying guns is bad. No. Assault rifles are bad. Large capacity magazines are bad. Nope. The NRA is powerful and bad. Whatever. And objections to bump stocks, displeasure at the notion that an end user's misuse of a product is not the manufacturer's fault. Here a loophole, there a loophole, everywhere a loophole, Bloomberg paid for this report. Ching cha ching cha ching. Seriously, Bloomberg-funded organizations are heavily represented in the endnotes, with Everytown and The Trace being disproportionately featured as source materials. And this is among an entourage of organizations and individuals that are exclusively prohibitionist, like Giffords, the Brady Campaign, the VPC of all organizations, Arthur Kellerman, David Hemingway, and a whole host of minor league players all chiming in a hoplophobic chorus shouting, "Guns bad!" Now, anyone who's familiar with the sort of research done by the aforementioned knows how shoddy and incomplete it is. And it really does no favors for the paper's credibility. And because most, if not all, of the aforementioned live outside of gun culture, they tend to overlook certain critical details that, when taken into consideration, unravel the narratives that they're trying to build. Now, seeking out the knowledge and experience of those who do live in gun culture could have gone a long way towards helping with the paper's quality. Unfortunately, such insider knowledge is glaringly absent from the paper itself. Sure, the NRA is mentioned and quoted only to have its views and its history misrepresented in the interests of vilifying the organization. No attempts, apparently, were made to tap the perspectives of, say, the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, the National Association for Gun Rights, the USCCA, nor Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, among a plethora of others. Not even Dr. John Lott nor Dr. Gary Kleck merited any mention for as much effort as prohibitionists have tried to put in disproving their works. They could have also consulted with the likes of, say, David Kopel, Stephen Halbrook, David Codrea, A.W.R. Hawkins, or Charles W. Cook. All people who would have been more than willing to share what they know and how they see things. But gun control, for all of its cries for conversation, is not really interested in dialogue. It prefers to stay isolated within its little ideological bubble, which gives its ideas no chance of really being evaluated. So, what you wind up with, as is indicated by the paper here, is a painfully lopsided hack piece with zero intention of telling the whole story, and using slipshod research to do it. Nothing is mentioned about the overwhelming majority, over 99% of us gun owners, who do none of the sort of things that this paper is trying to raise alarms about. Neither is any attempt made to even just acknowledge the value of guns as defensive tools, much less talking about how they save more lives than take them and prevent more crimes than are committed with them. No, the paper is just interested in playing up the risks and tragedies while completely leaving out of the picture the benefits that guns confer to American society. None of this really comes as any surprise to us who have read a goodly amount of gun control propaganda over the years. Even the attempts to gun shame the United States by cherry-picked comparisons with other countries is old hat. Other countries have got gun control, yeah, and most other countries score below us in various economic and human freedom indices as well, which really calls into question the whole notion that we're somehow undergoing a human rights crisis. But you're the gun-killingest among all industrialized countries. Again, there's no definition given of what an industrialized nation is, nor why that's even important. And there is no correlation between gun ownership and murder rate, even among nations. However, what does make this paper unique is that it attempts to reframe our civil rights, not in terms of our country's founding documents, but by someone else's, drafted by an international body some 200 years later. One such document that they draw heavily from is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, whose Article 6 speaks of a right to life. However, part of that right entails the means to defend that life, which has long been understood in various societies throughout human history, such as Hebrew society, which passed down its teachings to Christian societies, Roman society, Norse society, English society, Hindu society, Buddhist society, and even Islamic society, just to name a few. But you get the idea. For the valiant attempt that this covenant makes in looking at rights from an international perspective, curiously enough, it lacks any mention of a right to self-defense. I mean, the covenant's very first article mentions a right to self-determination. And in Article 9, there's reference made to a sort of security of person, but that and the right to life mentioned in Article 6 are both dependent upon a government's ability to pass laws and enforce them to protect these rights. This doesn't help much if your government lacks the resources to guarantee the right to life and security at all times, which, newsflash, all governments are inadequate in that regard. Or worse yet, if your government has no interest in securing either for its citizens. Fortunately, our own government recognized these shortcomings in the covenant, which is why it issued some legal reservations conditional to ratifying the document. And basically, it concluded that our own Constitution did a far better job of recognizing and upholding human rights than what was required by the covenant, and would continue to follow constitutional prescriptions above that of the covenant. Interestingly enough, being as steeped in international law as Amnesty International is, Given the nature of its work, of course, they seem to have forgotten this critical fact regarding how we observe this covenant. So, Amnesty International's paper is basically 149 pages of erudite-sounding bloviation, presenting the usual misrepresentations of gun issues, overplaying the tragedies while ignoring the benefits of gun ownership, and trying to prescribe prohibitionism on the basis of an international agreement that is inferior to our own Bill of Rights.